Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I have the privilege of sharing with you this fun stamp set. This is from Spellbinders and Fun Stampers Journey. They are doing a Stamp of the Month club, and this is the stamp set they sent me for January. So this stamp set is full of some keys, some wings, and some really fun sentiments. I thought it would be kind of fun to add a key over some of those wings, and I'm going to be building just a very simple card today, but I think it's one that kind of has a lot of sort of visual interest, even though it's really simple. So what I want to do is stamp out these wings, and I'm going to choose one of the keys here. I tried to choose the longest one because I really kind of wanted to stand out with those wings behind it. So I'm just loading these in my MISTI. When you do use cling stamps, you do want to take that foam piece out in the very back of your MISTI, and that will allow room for you to use these rubber cling stamps instead of just clear stamps. So I'm going to be embossing these images. So I'm grabbing my Brutus Monroe embossing ink, just inking up these stamps so that I can stamp them out, get a nice impression with my MISTI, and then I'll be going ahead and embossing them. So lately I'm using my corners from the MISTI. I just got those creative corners, and I'm kind of using those instead of my regular magnets because they actually fit into my MISTI. My previous MISTI magnets broke on me, and so I found some at a hardware store that work, but they were just a tiny bit thicker than the other ones. So using these creative corners has been really nice instead of those sort of makeshift magnets that I was using before. Anyway, moving on. So I'm sprinkling on some of this Gilded embossing powder onto my images. This is from Brutus Monroe, and I just love their embossing powders. They're ultra fine so that they can do some really detailed stamps, and they have no wax filler, so I find that they get an even shinier finish because they have no wax in it to kind of dull down that shine. So their metallics are amazing, and I love the Gilded. I think it's one of my favorites. So I'm just sprinkling that on my images. You can see I used a little dry brush there to brush away some of the powder that stuck to places it didn't need to stick to. And then I'm just gonna put my extra powder back into my jar and put it away, and then go ahead and heat emboss these images with my WAGNER heat gun. So I'm just showing you here after it's embossed how shiny this powder is. I just absolutely love it. So once these images were embossed, I grabbed my scissors and I'm just going to cut these out. I'm just doing some fussy cutting, and then here are the little pieces all cut out, and I'm going to set these aside while I work on my very super simple background. So I'm also using some glitter glaze from Brutus Monroe. Now this glitter glaze is really fun. It's kind of like a texture paste, but it's got glitter in it. And when you open it up, you're going to notice that this glitter glaze, all the colors they have, it looks a little cloudy. It almost looks like there's not much color to it. So at first you're kind of thinking, you know, how is this going to work? But once it dries, the color really pops out. So it's going to be so much more vibrant once it dries. This works great over stencils, and it works great to color die cuts and a lot of fun things. I'm just simply grabbing a little bit of this glaze with a palette knife and scraping it on my background. Now I wanted some of this glitter to look like it was sort of falling down from the sky, so I'm putting it on the top and just kind of dragging it down with my palette knife. So I want it to be a heavier glitter on the top and kind of fade out to the bottom. And when you put a little bit of glitter on, I'm not putting it on very thick. It doesn't take long at all to dry. I did go ahead and I sped up the drying process with my heat tool, which you can absolutely do. I do have to say it will warp your paper a little bit more if you use a heat tool. So it's always kind of better to let it air dry because it's going to flatten out after it dries, and you're going to have a really fun background. But I did use a heat tool just to kind of speed up the process because it didn't bother me at all, and I'm going to be adhering this down really well anyhow, so some warping wasn't going to be a problem. Now you do want to go ahead and clean up this glitter glaze right away before it sticks on. A lot of times I like to use a baby wipe, or I just take it to my sink with some warm soapy water and just wash it off. And if you're using a stencil, definitely go wash your stencil as well. So I'm kind of just arranging all the pieces that I want for the front of my card. Just kind of getting a visualization of where I want things to go and where I want to place things. And then I thought, Since I want that sentiment to be in the right spot, I'm going to use my Misty again for just lining everything up, making sure that sentiment is where I want it to go, so that it's placed correctly underneath my little fussy cut pieces. So here I am grabbing my little wings and my little key. I'm just kind of arranging them where I think I want them to go. It's not perfect. It's not the way it's going to be when I'm done, but I'm just kind of putting them there so I can eyeball the correct placement for my sentiment. So once I have all my pieces in place, I picked up my stamp with my Misty Door. I just removed those little fussy cut pieces because they didn't need to be there for this part. And then I grabbed some Versafine black Onyx ink and I stamped that out. Now I am stamping it on top of some of this glitter glaze, and it stamped fine. I've never tried stamping it on a stenciled glitter glaze or anything. There's not a whole lot of glitter right where I stamped it. It stamped perfectly fine. So if you're stamping it over just a little scraping of that glitter glaze, it works fine. But I don't know how it would work if you did a full-on background. Maybe I should try that sometime if you guys want to see if you can stamp over the glitter glaze. Now I'm kind of curious to see if that would work. Anyway, I'm using some of this Brutus Monroe foam adhesive. It's a really nice thick adhesive. It's also very sticky, so if you use it, I'd say use a pokey tool like I'm using here and just kind of lift off those backers. Otherwise it's a little bit tricky to get the back off, but if you use a pokey tool or a craft knife, I've found that it doesn't take too much to get that backing off. I love it because it's super sticky, so it really holds your backgrounds down really well. It's great for shaker cards, and the dimension is just right for popping up a front panel or for a shaker card because it gives a lot of room for all those shaker bits to shake around. But I am layering my front panel onto a white card base, so I get that sort of matted look and a little bit of dimension. It just adds a little bit more, it looks a little bit more finished is what I'm trying to say. So I'm using some different foam adhesive now for my key. This is a little bit thinner since I'm already using a lot of dimension on my panel. I wanted to just kind of pop this up to make it a focal point, but not too much so that there's not crazy dimension. If you're sending it through the mail, dimension kind of gets bulky quick. Sometimes they'll charge you a little bit extra if it's too thick. So I don't want to put too much dimension on here. So I have foam adhesive on my key, and I'm going to be using my craft glue for my wings. I'm just going to layer them behind my key, and I found that this fine tip applicator works perfectly with these little Brutus Monroe craft glue bottles. They fit on here perfectly, and I just love using this fine tip applicator because you can put little dots of glue on a tiny die cut or a sentiment or behind vellum or something, and you get a really precise application of that glue, and I think it's just, I love it. I'm using this fine tip applicator for everything. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and adhere down my wings. I'm just lining them up behind my key, trying to get them in the right place. You can notice I did not put some glue behind the very tips of the wing because I wanted them to kind of pop up a little bit, look like they're kind of flying off the page somewhat. And if you wanted them to stay there and not get squished flat, you could put a little piece of foam adhesive behind them. I didn't think to do that at the time, and I think it turned out well, so I didn't think I needed it, but you could definitely put a little piece of foam adhesive behind those wings if you wanted to. So now I'm just peeling off the back of my key. I'm going to go ahead and just adhere it down right in the center of those wings, and that's going to be my card for today. It's super quick, super simple, but I think this color scheme and the sentiment all works together really well. So thanks for joining me watching this card today. If you want more information, I'll have some at my blog. Otherwise, I'll have links below to all the supplies, and I will catch you guys next time. So have a great day. Bye.